Hello. Sorry about the last video. I edited out my disappearance, saved it, and then it was the editing software that I use is just garbage. Was telling me that, hey, you have to buy us. I've already bought it, so it wouldn't remove it. So I got to find the. It's a pain. So, anyways, we're gonna go about 15 minutes on this one. I hopefully I won't be as emotional and just be able to react to the video instead of throwing in talking over him.
Why would you create this violent and pernicious creature when you could create angels? As the angels clearly say, we, the angels, celebrate your praises and glorify you. They were asking one of the most fundamental questions in the entire history of religion. Why create you, man, this utterly fallible creature, this creature who could rebel against God's will, who could do such tremendous wrongdoing, who could wreak havoc like no other creature on earth, when you can make them angels? And look where the question is being asked. It's being asked in heaven. It's almost like saying, look, why don't you just make him angels and be up here in heaven with us, Why don't you just make him angels, pop him into heaven, he's fine. Why would you put him on earth where he could feel distant from you, where he could work out his worst criminal tendencies, act them out, feeling somehow independent and apart from you and free to do whatever he wants, when you could just make him angels and put him into heaven and make him perfectly submissive to your will? I looked at that question and said, that's my question. I'm not even a single verse into the story of mankind, and there before me I see my question. That whole question, everything that I ever thought, everything that I ever experienced, everything that I ever knew was in that question. It was as if the author took my life and wanted to pick out exactly the right question to humiliate me, to provoke me, to anger me. Why create man, this most destructive and violent creature, when you could make him angels? And then look at the answer. And he said, God said, truly I know what you do not know. In modern parlance, we would say, I know exactly what I'm doing. I read that and said, what? You know what you do not know? You know exactly what you're doing? Well, please inform me. Tell me what you're doing. Because, I'm 28 years old and I haven't figured out it yet. And I have a lot of issues that I'm still dealing with that's connected to this question. You can't just get off that easy. You can't just tell me you know exactly what you're doing. Not after what I've been through. Not after you made me this way. And then I realized, of course, I was arguing with a God I didn't even believe in. And that would happen several times as I read through the Quran. And sometimes I would just get into so agitated by what I read, I'd start arguing with this voice that I'm reading before me, that's calling to me. So we turn to the next verse. Well, it turns out that the Quran just doesn't dismiss the question. It starts to answer it a little bit. And in the next verse it says, and he taught Adam, God taught Adam, the names of all things. And then he placed them before the angels and said, tell me their names if you are right. So this verse is clearly referring to the previous one. But notice what it says. Now, I from my own background, I remember Adam naming things, but it wasn't connected to any answer to any philosophical question. But here, notice what it says. And he taught Adam the names of all things. And I realized already, just from the first verse, you got to read these verses very carefully because it's packed with a lot of symbolism and meaning. And he taught Adam the names of all things. So here we see Adam is not only just a creature who knows how to name things, who's acquiring the gift of language, but he's also a learning creature. God is teaching it. And right here, right in this verse, and it'll come even clearer in the subsequent verses, that the very first thing that the Quran is going to emphasize here is man's intellect. He is a learning creature. He is taught. And what is he taught? What is one of the great intellectual gifts he's given in response to the angel's question? The gift of language. Because through language, mankind could not only learn, but he could learn things not only through his own experience, but he could learn things that other people have experienced of times and places that are hundreds, thousands of years and miles separated from him. And so that all our knowledge becomes cumulative. Every generation learning from the generation before it. I'm learning today from authors I read from other sides of the world that may have existed 2,000 years ago.
I was just about to say, if you're reading, or, language is great for learning. Jeez, I keep kicking this light. Language is great for learning. But if one person's learning, then that means that somebody else is teaching. And just like the books behind me, there's authors on all of them. I read something, I may know about the subject, I learn a little bit more. That person was teaching me. They wrote a whole book on something. Some people will pick up a George Washington book and they'll know very little. And they learned. I read so many different books about him that I'm almost looking for new details that I don't know about. And that's what makes it fun and interesting. Now, I guess writing it still would be, I'm still reading in English, but it is still a communication form. So yeah, if one person's learning, that means somebody else is teaching. And none of us should be better than learning something that maybe we don't know about. There are things that out there that I really don't care to learn about. But I always hope there's going to be something fascinating about it that would lure me in. Islam, I never cared about. Most religion I didn't care about. Then you learn about the companions, you learn about the prophet, you learn about all the stories, and it's interesting. I wouldn't be doing this if it wasn't interesting. I would have moved on. But I find it fascinating. I'm going to sneeze, so I'm going to pause it. I'm going to just, ignore me.
And so we all contribute to our collective learning and knowledge. And so I'll see later in the Quran, when the Quran will emphasize this again and again and again. Like in one verse it says, read in the name of your Lord who created a man out of a tiny creature that clings. Read, it commands the reader. For your Lord is most bountiful. Why is he most bountiful? What great gift did he give you? For he taught man the use of the pen, and through it taught him what he otherwise could not know. And time again, the Quran will call upon man to use his intellectual faculties and swear by his intellectual faculties. And to use them correctly because they play a fundamental role in guiding him to truth. I never came upon a scripture that puts so much emphasis on the correct use of our intellectual faculties, on the harnessing of reason in helping us attain to faith. And he taught Adam the names of all things. And then he placed them before the angels and said, tell me their names if you are right. Okay, you have this objection you have this natural question about this creation of mankind. Here, this mankind is this human being, this human creature is a learning creature. He has many intellectual gifts. Here, I'm going to place these things before you. Tell me their names if you are right about man. And what did the angels say? In the next verse they say, glory to you. We have no knowledge except what you have taught us. In truth, it is you who are knowing, the wise. They say this task, this intellectual test that's put before them is beyond their grasp. Notice what they emphasize. We have no knowledge. This would take knowledge. This would take an intellect that they don't possess. In truth, it is you who are knowing, the wise. You got it. It's easy for you. You're the knowing, the wise. You have knowledge. You have wisdom. But this would take knowledge and wisdom that is beyond us. And so in the next verse we read, and he said, "O Adam, tell them their names." And when he had told them their names, notice how it's just like it's nothing for him. For mankind, he has this phenomenal ability. And when he had told them their names, as if it's just a triviality for man, he names them. "Oh, Adam, tell them their names." And when he had told them their names, God said, "Did I not tell you that I know what is unseen in the heavens and the earth? And I know what you reveal and conceal?" And he's clearly going back to the angel's question. Yes, you have these natural concerns about the creation of mankind. Yes, he could do these evil things. But look at this tremendous intellect he has. This is something you have overlooked that you haven't considered. And that's clearly the point of these verses. Even though I felt that the author didn't quite, it was as if I realized that he didn't misunderstand the story. He was taking one of the great stories in the history of humankind, one of the fundamental greatest stories in the history of mankind, and molding it and using it as a vehicle for an entirely original message. And God said, "Did I not tell you that I know what is unseen in the heavens and the earth? And I know what you reveal and what you conceal?" In other words, didn't I tell you I know exactly what I'm doing? And then
I know what you reveal and I know what you conceal. The conceal part is what makes me go, ooh, you saw that? Yeah, sorry about that. When you say you knew what I was concealing, did you mean God would be like, yeah, I watched you just pick your nose and then you flicked it at an insect and I don't understand why you did it. You flicked it so hard you hit the insect and knocked it off a tree and then you laughed. I don't understand why you did that. And I'd be like, oh, yeah. Did you see anything else? Yes, I did. Oh, okay. I'm going to take your word for it. We can just keep the rest of it quiet, sir.
Next, and didn't I not tell you that I know what you reveal and conceal? I looked at that. What question what did they reveal and what did they conceal? What did their question reveal and conceal? I thought about it for a minute. Oh, it's obvious. What did their question reveal? You just go back and look at the question. It revealed the sinful and sinister propensities of man. I mean, it's obvious, right? Why are you all looking at me like that? You're starting to scare me. You're all looking very serious. Am I losing you? Wow. Okay. So, they revealed the sinister and evil propensities of man. But what did their question conceal? And all you have to do is think about it for a minute. Human beings, yes, they could do evil. Yes, they could do wrong. Yes, they could create misery. But they could also do exactly the opposite. They could choose to do evil. They could choose to do tremendous good. They could choose to do tremendous violence. They could choose to show tremendous compassion. They could choose to live by falsehood. They could choose to live by the greatest truths. They could be terribly ugly. They could be terribly beautiful. And up until that point in my life, I, like the angels, that only saw one side of the coin. For the first time when I read that verse, believe it or not, it was an eye-opener for me. I had always been obsessed with the evil potentials of human beings. When I read that verse, I realized that, and I had a great example right in front of me with my own mom, I realized that I had been blinded by only one side of human nature. So we go on to the next verse. "And behold, we said to the angels, bow down to Adam, and they bowed down. But not so Iblis." Iblis is like the father of Satan. Satans, satanic beings, forces, creatures, existences. "He refused and was arrogant. He was of those who reject faith." An interesting statement. "And behold, we said to the angels, bow down to Adam. And they bowed down." Bowing down could symbolize two things. Bowing down could symbolize the superiority or potential superiority of one being over another, and so they bowed down to them. Bowing down could also mean that they serve that creature in some respect. Of course, the Quran says that all beings serve God, all created beings serve God. But this verse seems to be indicating, and the rest of the Quran will make it clear, that these angelic beings, these angelic entities, will serve the development of mankind. We'll even see later that the satanic beings serve the development of mankind. Both forces, angelic and satanic, will serve the development of mankind. Because one will present man with a choice to do the most altruistic things. The other will simultaneously try to influence man in the opposite direction. And so human beings will be moral creatures and will have to make moral decisions. And it's in those moral decisions that they will grow spiritually and morally as human beings. And they'll take that into the next life. And the angelic and the satanic forces will be catalysts for those moral choices that they make. They will heighten the human being's awareness of the rightfulness and the wrongfulness of the choice he's about to make. And the self, the soul, the nafs, as they say in Arabic, will have to make the ultimate choice between good and evil. And that choice, that test will come again and again and again as human beings either grow or decline. And those tests will come again and again and again to try to help him towards his spiritual evolution, to bring him back, but that choice is ultimately ours. But I'm getting ahead of myself. And so we've said to the angels, bow down to Adam, and they bowed down. But not so Iblis. Iblis is Satan, this rebellious force, this evil prompter, the one who whispers into the human heart. He comes into being. And with the introduction of Satan, we have the introduction of evil, that evil influences on human beings. And notice why Iblis does not bow down. He refuses because he was arrogant. You know, we often hear what's the root of all evil? In the West, it's always money, greed, etc. Here the Quran says seems to be saying that the root of all evil is not always material wants. It's not always money, it's not always greed. At the heart of evil is arrogance. Putting yourself above all others, of assigning to yourself special priority and neglecting the rights of others, of pride and arrogance and envy, the source of evil. He was of those who reject faith. I looked at that verse and I said, okay, I get why you would create angels to sort of influence man in a positive direction. But why in this story now are you introducing Satan? What sort of role was Satan play? And then, of course, you just think about it for a minute and you say, yes. The story is telling us that on one hand, we have these magnanimous urgings come from one direction. On the other hand, we have these satanic urgings coming from another direction. In other words, the Quran is telling us that man is not only a learning creature, but he's a moral creature. He has understanding of right and wrong. And God infuses those and allows those influences to come to him. Man is not only an intelligent being, but a moral being. And so, the Quran is not all that difficult to understand. You just sort of read it, I found, and you just sort of follow your nose through it and see what it's saying.
I'm going to go ahead and stop it there. I didn't talk a whole lot on this one because I think I talked too much on the first one. So I do apologize for that. I got to get more tea. Oh, man, I've been sneezing. Nose is just... Brr. I feel like there's so much pressure right here. The blinking hurts. All right, I'm gonna end it here. There's a thanks button on the channel. You could donate if you'd like. If you do donate, you can request a video. You don't have to. You can just donate and say thanks, and I'll say thank you. If you don't want to, you don't have to. No harm, no foul. And if you're watching this and you're not subscribed, please do it. There's no reason for you to keep coming back like a peeping Tom, you dirty, dirty person, peeking in on me. I got a tree outside my window and there's a bird on it just watching me. It's going. All right. Give it a thumbs up. Because if you give it a thumbs down, that just means that you're somebody who one day is going to get a lot of urine balloons thrown at you. And no one wants that. So don't do it. I just had a story, but it's not really related to this, so I don't think I should tell it. Why not? It's a little lighthearted story. So when I was growing up, I had a friend, Kris. He was my best friend. And yes, it was Kris and Kris. But he spelled his name Chris. Like, that makes a difference, right? And then we had a friend, Keith. Chris's parents were divorced, so he'd go to his dad's house every couple weeks, and he'd stay there for the weekend. As soon as he showed up, he would call my house, and then I would go over there Friday, and I would hang out there until Sunday. And then during the summer, he'd be there for like 2 weeks in a month, and so I would be over there for like 10 days of it. I always felt bad taking up all the time because it was time to spend with his dad, but you know, we were young. And you could look through the sliding glass door in the back, across the field. You could see our other friend Keith. Keith I was in school with Keith. He was a year older than me, or a grade older than me. I think he's probably a little older than me. So we used to do all kinds of stuff together. But it was, man, 6th or 7th grade maybe. So it's like 12 or 13. It was after my uncle had died. That was 92. Just maybe 93, 94. Maybe 92, 93, I don't remember. So Keith comes running over, and he gently taps on the sliding door, just, you know. And we open up the blinds, and we're like, hey, what's going on? He goes, hey, you guys want to come outside? And it's like 10 o'clock at night. And we were like, okay. We go outside, go through the field to Keith's house, and there was a couple people over there just riding like little scooters. And Keith says, hey, we're going to do some ring and run. And we were like, okay, game on. If you don't know, ring and run, it's got a lot of different names. One of them is a racially insensitive word, and then knock. It's referring to black people. Boom, boom. I never said that one. Heard it a lot. Heard it a lot by white guys. And I heard ring and run, and it just sounded, it had a better tone that also kept my face without getting a fist put into it. So I just said ring and run. So we're over there, and we're just, let me blow my nose. I'm sorry. Hold on. Okay. So we go over there, and Keith lived in a little cul-de-sac. So there was the main road, a little road there, and I think there was like maybe 4 or 5 homes on his little cul-de-sac. And he'd go out to the main street area, and there was a home over there that he would always do the ring and run, or the knock and run, whatever you wanted to call it. And basically the objective is, you go at night, you ring their doorbell, you knock on their door, and then you run and hide. Very difficult now with Ring cameras and, you know, doorbell cameras, all that stuff. Security cameras. But you go up, you knock on the door, and then you run and hide behind their car. You hide behind a tree in the yard. My friend Kris was the slowest amongst us, and that's where he would hide. Or he'd hide in the bushes right by the front door. So he's a monster. He's an animal. I never did that. I would run across the street and hide behind the car, like behind a tire, and you would just hear me giggle, because I would just be like, I was just so excited. So anyways, Kris was going to do it, and we're walking towards the house, because Keith was like, yeah, do that house. And we were like, okay. So we did paper, rock, scissors, boom, boom, pow. Or it's boom, 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 insert, whatever. And Kris was it, which was the exciting part. He was the one who had to knock. And I'm standing across the street with Keith, and I was going to just duck behind a car parked on the street, and Keith just grabs me and he goes, come here. And he runs me up to these bushes by this house, and we ducked down. The house was a split foyer. Basically, it means you go up some steps, you go in the front door, and there's steps that go up to the living room, kitchen, bedrooms, down a hallway, and then steps that go down, and that's to your basement and also your garage. It's a very efficient home in terms of maximizing your space. But your basement windows, your basement's about 5 feet in the ground, which would be insert whatever you need to understand the distance. And I'll say less than 2 meters. It's about 5 feet for the basement. Where the window was, you could put your chin on the windowsill, and you could open up the window. And so we're hiding by this home, and I'm looking across the street, and Kris knocks, and he runs and hides behind the tree, and I'm like, oh, Kris, you're gonna get caught. And Keith is saying, oh, that's not a good spot. And I'm like, why? And he goes, because I've hit this guy's house like 3 times tonight, which means he's done the knock and run. And I was like, you fool, you should have said something. Because this guy, this is now the 4th time, it's the first time for us, he's really not happy. So he's going to be chasing some people. So we're just standing there, and of course, after he says that he's hit this house like 3 or 4 times, I just can't help but giggle, knowing that Kris is really not in a good situation, and I'm just kind of sitting in there just giggling, and Keith is giggling. Then all of a sudden Keith's not giggling anymore, and I hear he's behind me, and I hear, this was what I was hearing. And then I start hearing this. Oh. I'm like, what are you doing, man? What's going on behind me that I'm hearing these moans? Don't like it. And he just grabs my shirt, and he's like, look. So we peek into the window to see a kid that he had graduated high school the year before, with a girl who had graduated high school the year before, with another girl who was a grade above Keith. Whatever grade he was in, she might have been a junior or maybe a senior, I don't know. And the 3 of them, well, they were starting to commit some sin, if you know what I mean. And so I turn my head, and I'm just like, oh. Now clearly I wasn't enjoying this, because it's terrible. It's sin, right? But to make sure that I am seeing what I'm seeing, I should continue to watch, just to make sure that what I am seeing is sin. It's terrible, And it was. Yeah. They didn't care if the Lord was watching them or not. And things escalated quickly in that basement. And me and Keith decided that just as things were about to start happening, the baby making process was going to begin. We decided that was the best time to start banging on the window, saying, the 3 of you are whores and sinners. You're going to hell. And we just took off running. The guy hops up, and he comes he was naked. He comes running out. He had a towel on when he came outside. But we ran around. We ran over to this other part by Keith's house. Keith is behind me, and I'm peeked out, and we are both just giggling, and we're just sitting there laughing, and we're laughing, and he's just like, I'll kick your ass, man. You guys come back here, I'll kick your asses. I'll kick all your asses, all right? So he ends up going inside. We are just giggling. All of a sudden, I get hit on my thigh. It was a tap. And I look over because I'm thinking Keith's tapping me for some reason. He was. But his hands were right here. As he was hip twisting and slapping me with his very much excited tool. And I'm like, what are you doing? Don't hit me with that thing. He had his pants on. He had sweatpants on. And I'm like, you don't hit me with that. What are you doing? How did you run with that? And he was like, it was difficult. Best part, we come walking out. Kris comes running up. He goes, oh my God, that guy was so mad. Did you guys see that? And we were like, nope. Our eyes went somewhere else. We after you knocked and you hid, I don't know what happened to you. As far as I'm concerned, you could have been kidnapped and be in the process of being brutally murdered, and I wouldn't have found out until at this moment right now. We completely... And then the best part, we're standing outside, and a car pulls up to the home. This is like 10, 15 minutes later. The girls were so embarrassed that they called... One girl called her mom. So they were picked up, and they were getting driven away out of this cul-de-sac. And we're standing there, Keith and I are standing there, and we start like bumping each other, and they're walking by, and we're going, hi, you dirty girls. And their car takes off, and we're just laughing away. And then I just stopped, and I go, you went to school with one of those girls, right? And he goes, yeah, she's a grade ahead of me. And I said, oh. Isn't she going to recognize you when you go back to school? And he goes, huh, yeah, I never thought about that. Keith wasn't the brightest bulb in the box of turds. I don't know why. I told that story because of it was something he said that got me thinking about them. Keith and it was fun hanging out with those guys. We did a lot of funny things. A lot of bad things too. All right, I apologize. I'm going to go ahead and end this here. To now, I will say, have a good day, have a good night.